When I talk about foreign policy in particular or anything like that, I'd be first to admit I come at it from a very UK centric view. Why wouldn't I? Um, when you look at Dylan Burns, for example, someone else who I think is very, very good on the left who talks about foreign policy, he comes at it from a very, very much a American point of view. When you saw, I think it was Rory Stewart, and I can't remember who was the other guy he was talking about, and you saw that clash of differing foreign policies. Rory Stewart very coming from like a UK sort of conservative foreign policy view versus a more sort of again an American US foreign policy conservative view. So you do get these different types of views, and over the years, I have talked about a lot of things from, I will say and admit, from a very sort of British point of view. And that, as I have seen in the comments many times, people saying, that's just, quote, English exceptionalism, without really giving it any credence, I think, or any justification. But we're once again going to be talking about something that has, again, cropped up in sort of relations to sort of the UK and the EU, and I'm coming at it from again a very sort of UK sort of centric point of view, and my point of view, as I have always said, and I've always been very clear on. Let me reiterate this because there's a lot of people out there who put words in my mouth unfairly. Um, I'm coming at it from the point of view is that there will be, when we change governments, there will be a lot of talks and opportunities for the UK and the EU to talk with each other, to negotiate with each other, and to potentially, I think, get a lot of stuff done. That has always been my point of view. That has always been my viewpoint. We can potentially rejoin, the single market customs union, but that is going to take negotiations. That is going to take a road. There is a process to do that. I have never denied that there is not a process or anything like that, even though other people might say otherwise. But it is going to be difficult, but not impossible. Because that's where you have negotiations, companies, and well, not companies, but countries here working, together to achieve things. And I think now more than ever, it is really showing we are in a world where countries working together, cooperating together to get things done to a shared goal and a shared value is more important in the world, more so than ever before. That is the viewpoint I am taking, and that is the viewpoint I've always had, and that is the viewpoint even now when we see what we're going to go into this, to this article here. That is the viewpoint I will take. So that is my, once again, I want to state my position. And if you see anyone out there who says otherwise, do point them to this video. Do point them to that first, couple of minutes where I state out what my position is, because it's always has been that position. It's never changed, despite what I know other people have said about me on other channels. But there you go. So, before we do get into this, though, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page. And of course, the one of today's link called Buy Me Coffee. We can well buy me coffee, the YouTube thank you button. And of course, as always, there is the Pony Club down below as well. And it's Monday. Oh, wow. 3 days. Yeah, 2 days to go till voting day. And then all change. all change. All change, hopefully for the better. Really. But I've said that before. On the last sort of pre-Good Morning Walk, before the all change. So again, like I say, let's crack on into this. But yeah, what a feeling of relief we have coming. But anyway, on to this. This comes from the Guardian with the title of "The EU would not rush to reopen Brexit talks with Labour, says Brussels sources." So, The EU will not rush to reopen Brexit negotiations with the UK, even if Labour are swept to power on Thursday, senior sources in Brussels have indicated. Never expected them to. I never expected them to just go rushing in, and reopen Brexit negotiations. We went over just a couple of weeks ago the guy who co-authored the withdrawal agreement said, yeah, eventually we could, see the withdrawal agreement reopened and things negotiated. I know, shocking, but there you go. But there are, and even we'll see later in this article, there are a lot of, I think, really good opportunities where we can work together to achieve a lot of stuff going forward. So it continues. They say that they will welcome a change of government, but the deep scars left by the Conservatives during the Brexit negotiations, we'll get onto that far right thing in a moment, but the war in Ukraine, given the fact that the UK is in heavily support of Ukraine, it does not make any sense for Europe to keep us outside of any negotiating things or anything like that, where we can also help in and help step up and support Ukraine. That does not make sense keeping us outside on those, security agreements and things like that. That does not make a whole lot of sense. It makes more sense for us to be involved in those talks about how we can all to come together as Europe to help, support Ukraine during this time. Not only just this time, but after the war as well, which is just going to be as crucial period for Ukraine because there is a lot of rebuilding that Ukraine and support it will need during that time as well. So let's get on to this. So they said, it's not that people are thinking good things about the UK. It is not that they are thinking bad things, is that they are not thinking about the UK at all. Again, I agree, but I want to point out they're not thinking bad things either. Currently, as we've said, it is very, 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 very much reliant on who I think becomes into this. It sort of depends how we've seen Labour sort of wanting to sort of engage and talk with the EU more on a lot more sort of friendly terms about working together. That in itself is going to be a massive pole and polarity shift in these things, and I think we will see over time things get better. We will see things improve. We will probably see, ultimately, I think, in this parliament, big talks here in the UK about Brexit, the impact of Brexit, potentially even talks about reversing Brexit, but there you go. Anyway, one source, senior close to the Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said, another senior source warned that despite the warmth, Labour can expect that there is no appetite for Brexit in European capitals, saying that the UK is simply not in people's minds. We currently have 2 wars going on. Reopening talks on Brexit would require a lot of political capital and absorb a lot of resources here in Brussels, he said. Again, that is true. That would require a lot of talks, a lot of political capital, but it's not impossible to do. It is very likely we can have those talks and have those discussions. But it all depends, as we said, on what political capital, how things are going in Europe. But as I've said before at the beginning, I really do believe there is a lot of stuff we can actually achieve together, working with Europe, working with them to achieve a lot of similar problems they are also experiencing as well. Because we are a lot closer aligned on a lot of things than I think a lot of people really want to admit. But there you go. So back to it. So the prospect, of course, of a Margaret Thatcher style rebate row in France if Marine Le Pen gets a majority in France in the election could also throw sand in the protracted negotiations over the long-term post-EU 27 budget, already now complicated by the possible accession of Ukraine. Senior sources in the Commission will have also indicated that the UK would have to come with a very big offer in exchange for any concessions to strengthen relations with an otherwise occupied bloc. And I think, as I said, UK negotiators would know that. I think that is very, very well aware. We are aware of that we would have to have concessions, but we would expect things in return. So we've seen, as it will discuss later, the idea of freedom of movement for young people rejoining Erasmus. Um, having a look at uh, a veterinary style agreement, which, bear in mind, would solve a lot of headaches, especially when it comes to the idea of the Northern Ireland and helping ease things there. You know, there's a lot of areas where we can work together on that. A lot of areas. And I think it is this good for both of us? And going forward, I think you're going to see a lot of questions asked. And I think those are the areas where we need to sort of look and focus on first. So they said, if we are asked to sort of give the UK a gift, the question will be, what do we get in exchange? Again, we aren't asking for, you know, to get things without anything, being given. I think that should also be very clear as well. I'm not going to say we're going to go to the EU. I'm going to say we want this, and I'm not going to balk at anything the EU might say it might want in return. I think that is entirely to be expected on that. So people were asking whether it's worth the pain, said senior Brussels diplomat. The Labour leader Keir Starmer has already ruled out rejoining the customs union or the single market, saying that it would bring turmoil, but he has said that he does want to improve relations on trade, research development, defence, security, and education. We could work together on those very easily. Because again, I think we are far, far, far more aligned on those things, on trade, research, development, than the people really want to admit. But there you go. Um, Carbon pricing and again, realignment of the highly expensive regulation of chemicals is also very much likely to be on the wish list of an incoming Labour government. Again, regulation of chemicals. The current Conservative government has really lightened the regulations on chemicals, very, very much so, in quite a worrying way. When you get a Labour government back in, I expect those chemical regulations to be brought back in. I fully expect those to be happen, and I think once you get back a sort of a sensible regulatory, a government that's saying, yeah, actually, we would like to see, better regulation of things like chemicals, then that is a potential point where once again we can have talks and discussions about that. you know, the UK and the EU are not a million miles apart. All it is going to take is talks and negotiations on these things. But again, me saying that is treated as if I'm some sort of madman, gibbering in the corner. But that has been my position all the time and time again, just like we are seeing here. Hey, we are willing to sort of talk with the UK. We are seeing this here. We are willing to talk with the UK on this. This is coming from people in Europe saying, yeah, we can talk with people in the UK, but if they come something with us, we're going to sort of say, well, we'd want to sort of say this. This is how international negotiations work. This is how international relations work. But there you go. Anyway, so it would also likely to seek reopen talks of the new veterinary agreement, which could eliminate many of the checks on the food and farm import products exported to the EU. Although one UK government insider did warn that this would involve years of pain and maybe not maybe as attractive to Brussels as London imagines. Again, I think again to do that, it's going to take a lot of other things. I think it's going to really take multiple things on that. And once again, we get to that point. Let's say we try that and we fail. Like, Brussels refuses. We get to a point, and this is the point where I've said multiple times throughout the years we could be aiming for. You get to a point where you can have Labour turn around and say, right, we've tried negotiating with Brussels. We cannot do it. The only way we can achieve a lot of these aims is to sort of rejoin, the EU or the single market, the customs union. Let's go in that direction. And I think that is a direction a lot of people have said for quite a while the direction of travel we will be heading in. For Labour to turn around and say, okay, UK public, this is Brexit. We've tried our best to improve it. This is the reality of the situation. Are you sure you really want to continue with this? And at that point, as we've seen with the polls, Brexit is going to have to, I think, be reversed. So, Anand Meron, the professor for the European politics at King's University and director in the UK Changing Europe think tank, also sees a disconnect between some of what the Labour types believe and the reality of a Europe in 2024, saying the first thing we have to wrap our heads around is that we are not a priority. Never claimed we are, by the way, even though some people will argue differently. But there you go. They have far bigger fish to fry than any improvements on trade and cooperation. We have to offer them something that many European states are now keen on. He told this at a car industry event last week that it was a flawed assumption by many supporters that the EU would be more favourable to Keir Starmer just because he was not conservative. Again, just because we've got a change in government doesn't mean that the EU is going to be sort of as open to us. But what is going to change, as I've said multiple times, is the attitude that is going to change. The fact that a Labour government is far going to be more open to cooperating with the EU, for having talks, having negotiations. Whereas the Conservative government was like, well, under Boris Johnson, it was like, we ain't going to speak with you at all. And then in comes Rishi Sunak that did change negotiations somewhat and said, we'll talk with you about certain things, but not others. I think when we get a Labour government in, we are going to see a vastly different approach from the UK to Europe on that. So the EU will be very hesitant about reopening the TCA, partly because it was, quote, very disproportionately good for the EU, but also because the Russian invasion of Ukraine has made it far more inward looking and far more protectionist in nature. He said in reference to a suite of policies designed to secure EU energy, food, and critical raw materials in a wake of an outbreak of war. On the other hand, a changed political landscape of the EU, which has seen far right empowered by many, also paradoxically would give a flip to Labour, as the likes of Geert Wilders or even Marine Le Pen, if elected to power in France, may push policies just to piss Brussels off, says Milan. And that is going to open up something we'll get into a bit later in this article. But no, that is right. This, the changing political landscape in Europe is vastly different. And bear in mind, there was an article written, I think it was Politico, that was right. Well, if Brexit hadn't happened, and you look at voting patterns and voting intentions here, the social democrats in Europe would suddenly be running the show if we were still in. But hey, there you go. What could have been, but never mind. Paradoxically, if France's EU membership and Macron's status is weakened by an electoral victory for Le Pen, alignment with the UK under Labour could rocket in appeal to Berlin and other capitals not as keen on Macron to and not as keen as Macron to punish for Brexit. Gee, gee, all of a sudden we might become a priority if that becomes the case. Yeah, bear this in mind. This has been something that's been talked about before. Look, when we were in the EU and part of it, it was known as the Big Three. That Britain would balance out the power between France and Germany, and that a lot of the smaller European countries would come to us for to form sort of power blocks to help balance out France and Germany. But now we're not there. Now you've got France that is you know well I hope not, but if it does go for Le Pen, Germany and other certain European capitals are going to be looking to try and balance out the power that France has in the EU. Might that be a realignment and more active engagement with the UK. History and historically, especially from diplomatic issues, has shown that to be the case. So if Le Pen does get in, will be certainly bad for us, but hey, could mean a lot more alignment with the UK. Swings and roundabouts, I think, as the term is. But hey, who knows? Personal change, also at the top of the European Commission, could also give talks with the UK more fresh impetus. Markus Sovak, who's been the main interlocutor, get out, of the UK relations since Brexit, has now been endorsed for a second term by Slovakia's President Peter Pellegrin. But he is not expecting to remain in the same portfolio when the new College of Commissioners is formed, possibly as late as October. Ollie Robbins, Theresa May's European advisor, is also being tipped to return to Whitehall, possibly as a cabinet secretary. Brussels insiders do say that Erasmus is one of the low-hanging fruits that the UK could use to create a disproportionately goodwill with the new Slovak. Re-entering Erasmus could be of huge political importance in the capitals. Leaving the program was unfair and a punishment of young people by the Bullingdon Club people, says a senior commission source. So by October, if Slovak has changed into another position and it's someone else who's come into this new position, and the UK comes forward with, well, we'd like to re-enter Erasmus, as you've just seen there, re-entering Erasmus could have been a huge political importance. I'll keep on saying this again. The UK and the EU are more likely to talk and work together than I think a lot of people have really been given them credit for. But there you go. Opening talks on a youth mobility program could also then curry favour, even though an unexpected offer by Brussels was roundly rejected by Labour and Tories back in April. Maybe that might change. Maybe Labour might go, well, okay, if we're going to re-enter Erasmus, youth mobility program, in exchange, you let us re-enter Erasmus, we'll give you youth mobility. All these things are very, very much possible. The background now to the offer now does suggest that policies were at play, giving Starmer ample room for manoeuvre. Sources do say that the UK proposed a youth mobility program with over 6 different countries, including France, but Brussels went into complete panic, with some member states would now break off and do unilateral deals, prompting Ursula von der Leyen to make the bombshell offer during the middle of a leaders' summit in April. Bear in mind, a lot of people say that that offer did not come from Ursula von der Leyen. They say that, oh, no, that came from a think tank. You just had it said here. Prompting Ursula von der Leyen to make the bombshell offer during the middle of the leaders' summit back in April. That doesn't sound like it came from a think tank to me. But hey, these are the things that we could do and do this. It is entirely possible to negotiate with the EU. So insiders do also say that the proposed home fees for EU students in UK universities, which no UK government would then finance, show how poorly thought out through the Brussels document was, but outside of the highly charged election environment, it should be seen as a starting point and an olive branch. Again, what we've got to do. We've got to offer that olive branch. I entirely agree with it. We've got to offer some sort of olive branch and show that we are sort of keen to sort of talk with each other and have and improve these relations, because like it or not, we are part of Europe. The EU cannot just ignore us, as much as some of the comments I often see on my channel do seem to indicate. That this is my exact criticism that I have leveled against many conservatives who just think we can just ignore China and somehow it's a problem that will just go away by itself. You know, back when the whole announcement came out that Lammy had been to see, like, Donald Trump and talk with him. If Donald Trump, again, I hope not, but if he wins in November, we cannot just ignore America for like the next 4 years. And ironically, if Donald Trump did get in America, you would probably see a lot more closer relationships with the UK and the EU. But back to this. So let's finish this off. Diplomats also say that the EU have been keen on a more formalized security and defense agreement and a discussion on aligning policies on carbon pricing schemes, which includes taxing of greenhouse gas emissions and generating in the production of imports and exports. We've already seen earlier that that is something that Labour would want to do, of taxing those greenhouse gases and things like that. That does, and especially on defence as well, does show that, again, the EU and the UK are not 1,000 miles apart, that it is entirely possible to negotiate, to have these discussions, to do this, because this is what you do in international diplomacy and international relations. You talk with each other, you find out where your common ground is, and then you find out how you can achieve that common ground. Or you both realize, oh, actually, we've got a similar goal here. How can we work together to achieve that goal? And yet, I'm treated like some sort of madman gibbering in the corner. But time and time again, once again, as we've heard there, the EU is willing to talk to the UK. I've said before, I don't mind if there are concessions. I don't mind if the UK makes concessions and say, well, we'll offer you this in exchange for this. Just guess what? That ends up more on a path back to rejoining the UK, because we can make an argument then to the rest of the British public, hey, look, we've achieved all this through being friends and being partners. Why on earth are we actually outside of the EU? Doesn't make a lot of sense. So there you go. Anyway, as always, let me know what you think down below. Am I some sort of gibbering madman in the corner? Or am I actually talking a lot of sense that, the UK and the EU are going to talk and negotiate with each other? Oh, probably a lot more effectively than certainly under, well, the current government we have now. Hopefully for only just a matter of days. But as always, let me know what you think down below. Do remember to click the like and the share button. And of course, as always, there is the Patreon page, there's the Buy Me a Coffee link, there's the YouTube thank you button, and of course, there's the Pony Club down below as well. And of course, we'll see you all very soon.